Hey, welcome everyone. This is Joel Oleson, and I'm here with Ryan and Galen. Can you guys hear me?
Perfect, Joel. Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome, excellent. Well, let me introduce myself. I'd love for Ryan and Galen to introduce themselves as well before we get started. I'm Joel Oleson. I'm a director at Proficient. I'm a Microsoft MVP and regional director. And it's fantastic to be here. I feel like I'm in the UK, but at least virtually. Great to be in Europe in this crazy times. But yeah, let me hand it over to Ryan for a second.
Hi, I'm Ryan Schouten. I'm also an MVP in Office Apps and Services. I've been there for a while, and it was a great opportunity to produce the event that we're going to be talking about today and kind of get some of these learnings that we had and the experience for putting this on. So I'm glad to be here.
And Galen? I know Galen's there.
Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Galen Keene. I'm a managing partner of Butterfly Technologies, a professional services company on the West Coast, and collaboration architect. And excited to join you today to talk about Teams, live events, and event platforms, and share with you what we learned putting on our event and some tips and tricks with live events.
Awesome. So our agenda today, we want to talk about the virtual marathon and what we did with this kind of large scale virtual event. I also want to talk about kind of give you some metrics and kind of the behind the scenes. I want to talk about what it's like to produce a live event and give you some tips and tricks there. And I've expanded this deck since I did it last. We've actually added a bunch of stuff from Ignite. I also want to help you understand the differences between live meetings. And we recently ran a party using meetings. And just like in this event, where there was absolutely a decision, do you use live events or do you use meetings? And what is it like? We want to kind of work our way across those two and help you understand some of the differences and why you'd choose one over another, and then share some of our experiences. So I mentioned party. We just ran a party. In fact, you can go to both of the websites we created and see kind of what those events were about. One of those was the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon, which was a very large scale global event that ran over the course of 36 hours. We had around 500 speakers, and we'll talk about some of those logistics and the craziness there. And then most recently, we ran this post-Ignite party where we hosted it on Microsoft Teams, where we had a number of different musical things that were going on, plus trivia and lightning talks. And you can go to those websites. One of them's M365VC for the virtualcommunity.com. And then the other one is M365virtualmarathon.com. So when you're creating an event, there's absolutely a decision. Do you want to run it on Teams or meetings? And I want to give you kind of a little view of what it's like from an infrastructure perspective. So with live events, as an organizer, you can decide to run it through Stream, Yammer, or Teams. If you're using Teams, you can have multiple presenters. You add those presenters in. You have producers. You can have multiple producers, and it is absolutely different roles. There's a number of third-party tools which can help you on the producing side of it. You may have heard people talk about OBS Studio, which is a open source suite that basically can help you take your streams and help you kind of do interesting virtual things in terms of the production side of it, where you can bring in audio or video and then being able to kind of create a studio type of experience. As well, Microsoft's actually been doing a lot with NDI as well. I should mention that. And Ryan, if you want to jump in here, talk about your experience on the producing side using tools like OBS and NDI.
Yeah, sure can do. Like one of the things, like when we ran the marathon, some of the features we have now would have been really nice to have, but we didn't have available to us. So there have been a lot of improvements and enhancements made. And as Joe mentioned, one of those is the NDI. And if I remember correctly, it's like the network device interface, something along was what NDI stands for. But essentially what it is it allows you to take content from a meeting. So for example, in this case, I could turn it on and take the content that's being shared on the screen and all the camera and audio feeds into an external tool, say for example, OBS, and mash all those together and combine them in a way that's a lot different than what we have right now. Instead of just being slides only and then our little pictures across the bottom, there are ways we can kind of combine it together and do a combination of the different sources, and we can include 3 different cameras, for example, all along the side or overlaid. We have a lot more options. We can do a lot more power with that. I know we may talk a little later. There are also some improvements coming on for Teams that make that a little more native, so you don't need external tools. But yeah, as far as producing it, it's a fairly, once you get comfortable with it, it's a fairly simple process and tool, but it does take, it's a little more advanced than just saying, hey, I want to share this screen. We got these speakers, we're done. But as you can see, as you've probably seen throughout this event, out of the box with just a Teams meeting works. You don't need any extra skills. You don't need any special knowledge. You can just say, hey, I want to share my content, and turn on your camera and you're off and running. So there are a lot of pros and cons, whether you're going with a live event or you're going with a Teams meeting. And in large part just kind of depends on the interaction level that you want between the presenters and the attendees. Microsoft is trying to blur the lines a little bit between the two products, trying to bring them closer to parity. But there are some things that kind of, you got to choose, okay, which one really is going to meet the needs based on your audience.
Absolutely. And we're going to dive a little bit further into that. One last thing I wanted to mention is if you're running events on a internal network, like, you know, a lot of people would do, say, their town halls, or, hey, we want the CEO to, and we want to produce this throughout the organization. There's a lot of networks that may struggle with that. So there are technologies for helping you to take advantage of caching and scale. In fact, I'm aware of a number of customers who use either Hive or Ramp for the caching side of it. And the viewing side of this, the kind of the watching it, whether you want to watch it on desktop or web or mobile, you know, whether it's cloud or whether it's on the internal network, there's a number of capabilities for being able to do that. And there, again, are some major differences between Teams meetings and live events. And I wanted to kind of just give you this kind of quick view, and I think this will change a little bit over time. But what we're on right now is Teams meetings, where essentially you can have some level of interactivity. We can actually have people come off mute and ask questions, where with live events, it's a very moderated, very structured experience, where today, if your role as attendee, say you're on a mobile device, on a live event, you wouldn't be able to come off mute at all. Only speakers, producers, and organizers can actually do audio. And again, like if you wanted to do, hey, we want our attendees to interact on video, that is not something you can do on live events, where with meetings, yeah, it's great for small to medium kind of group conversations, those impromptu meet now type scenarios. You can record, where in Teams Live, you can actually set it up to auto record the video. So that way, if you're running a large event, like in our case for the virtual marathon, we had it automatically record, where it was recording, everything was sitting there ready to be chopped up, and we uploaded it to YouTube after it was over. And that was really quite powerful to be able to have all those, not having to tell every speaker, hey, every speaker, make sure you record. I can imagine we'd lose, you know, half of the recordings, because people, it seems like it's always a problem. People forget to record, and depending on your role in a meeting, sometimes you don't even see the button if you're not in the tenant. Like, a situation like this, we didn't see the record button because actually members of the tenant were guests, and guests can't click the record button. Is there anything else you guys want to add on to that, the kind of the difference? And let's say you're running an event. When would you decide, Galen, when would you decide to run meetings versus live events?
Yeah, I think one big differentiator for me is the level of interaction that's required, as well as and that kind of blends over to, you know, is this more of a one-way conversation? So if it's a one-way conversation and I want to have like a lot of production quality, high production quality type of stream going on, then I might choose live events. However, if I need that dialogue and I want to bring in that audio, then it's a must-have. You must switch to meetings. So for me, that's the biggest differentiator.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. I was talking to a university not long ago, and they were talking about kind of like the speed dating kind of experience of employers meeting candidates. To me, that was a no-brainer that needed to be Teams meetings, where with live events, that lack of interactivity, but the production and scale, you want to have tens of thousands of participants, absolutely, let's go live events, sorry.
Yeah, the biggest thing is, like, if you look at it, a lot of companies, they'll have these town hall experiences where it's designed to be one way, where you have the C-level people sharing content that may need, like, they can have some Q&A functionality, but for the most part, it's just the attendees are consumers only of the content. They're not really involved in it all that much. Whereas with the Teams meeting, the attendees can be involved as much as the organizers need them to be. So it makes it a lot more of an interactive experience. So if you think about like a user group meeting where people are used to being there in person and being able to raise their hand, ask a question, that is kind of like the differences between the two. You've got your user groups where everybody's there in person in a nice personal setting, and then you have your live events where it's just designed for like a big auditorium style where if everybody was able just to raise their hand and start asking questions, it could be chaos, and that's not what those are necessarily designed for. So it's just kind of a good way of visualizing the difference between the two.
Absolutely. And I've even seen it on, say, some of the MVP calls we're on where there might be hundreds of MVPs. Microsoft will very quickly mute us all, but at the end, they'll open it up and say, hey, they're looking for interactivity at the end of it, and they want everybody to come off of mute, and they want some level of interactivity. But man, that chat will go nuts at times based on what's happening, and even the chat interactivity is kind of fun. And that attendee chat interactivity is only possible today as well with meetings, where you can do some Q&A. And what we're looking at here on the screen is this live events experience where you're the producer or the organizer, and you can see this concept of there's the queue versus live, and it doesn't work exactly like it sounds. What's queued doesn't necessarily mean it hasn't gone live yet. When you click the send live, it goes live, and then the event itself is live, and anything in the queue is actually related to, if you notice the very bottom left corner of the screen on the left, you'll see that there's two different types. There's one where it's full screen versus divided screen, where the video is on the one side. Something that I'm really excited about for next year is the concept of layouts, where you'll have these custom layouts where you'll be able to pick and choose much more creative experiences when producing. So that I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, the beauty of it is you get to use the AI functionality that's already in place for Teams for being able to do the cropping of the backgrounds and everything. So you got all that functionality, the stuff that's built into Teams that it does pretty well, and they're just kind of combining these together where you can say, hey, I want me cropped with no background in this spot on the screen. I can put them anywhere really I need it, and it's all just built into the tool.
And while we're sitting on this producing experience, there's one thing I'm going to point out to you. You see that little red end button? It almost looks like it's this is the button you click when you want to leave, or this is the button you want to click when you're trying to set it back to the queue. No, 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 no. This end button will absolutely destroy, it will close down this room and you will not be able to open it back up again. So that was one of the first things we needed to teach our producers, was just how critical that end button was. Now, attendees can't see it, speakers shouldn't be able to see it, but we had some situations where we weren't sure if there was going to be a producer, and so we gave some of our speakers rights. And man, it became a problem because people would think, oh, I'm done speaking, I'm clicking end. But just like this conference, there's a session after this session. So if you're in a track and somebody clicks end, that meeting's got to be recreated, or the live event has to be recreated because the actual live event has been shut down.
Yeah, that's a huge. We cannot overstate the importance of that red button and being aware of where it is, and not ever touching it. And one thing just to note on the right hand side is that live event Q&A, and that is where interaction occurs. You can see from the producer's role that the producer can publish questions that attendees may be submitting via the Q&A panel. So they can publish those so that all attendees can see and reply to them as well. So that is your vehicle for communicating with your attendees in a live event.
I think it's also important to note that it's one of the most important reasons why you want to have a producer and a speaker as two different roles, is because the person who's speaking and sharing their screen, when they're sharing their screen, they actually can't see that panel. So it's helpful to have somebody who's doing the moderation, because when you're speaking, you're not going to be able to see the questions. So unless they go into this mode where they're actually viewing the panel on the side, which can be distracting. All right, so one other thing to note, if you have a producer or a speaker who's on a mobile device, that's not available on live events. That's only available on meetings. So with meetings, you can have somebody who comes on audio and speaks, which I had to do recently at an event where I was driving. So with having live meetings, it was very helpful to be able to do that. And that was also another scenario where we called it the inception kind of mode, where it's you've got somebody you're joining a meeting and then they're taking that meeting and then using OBS or NDI to pull that meeting into the live event. And I know that sounds kind of complex, but that was another way we were able to kind of pull a meetings type of experience into a live event. A little bit about the organizers for that global event we did. You can see we had we actually had Dipti from India, we had Yana from Europe, as well as I from Japan. So that helped us kind of the idea of executive producers around the world as you're trying to do a 24-hour event. Don't try and do that yourself. It's absolutely helpful to have people around the world. And as well, one of the things we did there was language, and language is absolutely something that both that especially with live events, the captions and the translation, huge. It's super awesome to be able to have multiple languages and be able to have the attendees be able to switch the language for themselves, be able to listen to it in their own or view it in their own language. They can read the captions. So we had 7 languages in our event.
And one of the things that's kind of interesting is the with all those languages and all that stuff. Right now, for live events, essentially, you can translate the direct captioning to a bunch of different languages as long as the source language is either, if I remember right, it's English, German, and there's one other language. I'm forgetting what the third one was. So in our case, we had our English tracks, all of them available in all of these languages. So we had it in French, Japanese, Portuguese, Korean. We had it on those languages. Plus, we also, since German was on the other languages, we had that one too. So it's kind of nice that for the majority of our content, for the English content, anybody that's speaking one of those other languages that we had selected for the official languages for the event could now watch and get the captions for what was being said in their native language.
So quick stats, and I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but basically we did all different audiences, and we had 415 sessions from 355 speakers. We did kind of these keynote every 4 hours, which will then kick off the next section of 3 breakout sessions. Very, very global event. It worked really well. I was super excited about it. We definitely plan on doing it again. A little bit about our tech stack. Essentially, we were using Eventbrite for registration, and hint, hint, registration is actually a feature coming to Teams in the future. Sessionize is what we use for speaker management and scheduling. I haven't heard too much about that kind of thing coming, but that's absolutely something that we felt like was important, and Sessionize worked actually quite well. We integrated that with some GitHub pages that Ryan can talk about. We use social for our outreach, live events for the delivery platform. We use kind of Teams meetings for our Ask the Experts, our vendor booths, and we use it as kind of a backup for any failed live session. Like I mentioned, you can't restart them. But as well, where we had, if we were going to have any problems with the platform, our plan was to fall back to Teams meetings. And we used forms for our surveys and that kind of thing. Tygraph, which is a partner, they helped us gather some sentiment across our social, and we used AltSpace VR, which is a Microsoft product, as kind of a 3D element to our events. And one of the cool things is we actually were streaming to YouTube, and then we pulled the YouTube feed into the 3D AltSpace VR rooms. So that was kind of cool too.
Yeah, so talk about what we did with the pages. We opted to go with GitHub Pages. One, because it's free. We tried doing this as low cost as we could. When we started out, this was just going to be us running this thing. We had since partnered with the SharePoint conference team to kind of help grow it a little bigger. But as part of that, the GitHub Pages allowed us to be able to take the content in a way that was easily workable. So it's HTML, JavaScript, but then to be able to manage it all in a GitHub repository. So all the content for the site that we're looking at here, which is the M365 Virtual Marathon.com, is available in GitHub. So if anybody wants it, we can give you a link to it. So really, it made it really simple and easy. We want to make a change. We just updated the files, get a GitHub commit, a Git commit, and then within a few minutes, the pages were published out, and it was responsive. We had, as Joel mentioned, at times we had between 20 and 30,000 people accessing the site and the content, and it performed flawlessly, and it did it really well. So also based off of and we've had some other events that we've talked to it since. So like the join, big, huge join button on there, and then for example, the French flag, those were added in just by injecting some JavaScript to the Sessionize output. So there are ways you can kind of be creative and add the content to make it a little more snazzy than just what you get out of the box. And since we had a virtual event instead of an in-person, it really was necessary to be able to give attendees a simple way to be able to join the event and be able to participate in the meetings that were happening.
Awesome. We also had one of our speakers who actually generated this really cool Power BI. I don't know if you call this a chart or a graph, but essentially this cool interface where you could see all the different sessions sorted, filtered by time, audience, title, description, language, track, and even viewing it on a calendar. Really, really super cool. Power BI. I've never seen such a thing. You can actually check that out as well with the bit.ly link there. And this deck, I will share it on slideshare.net. Just search for my name, Joel Oleson, and it's one of my latest ones. So
plus we'll also publish this as with the rest of the the slides for the event.
Awesome. Absolutely. So we had about 13,000 attendees across 115 different countries.
And we do have to mention that we had about 13,000 registered. As you can see on the numbers here, this is how many people were actively participating on the site. So on the bottom left there, we had 31,000 people view the different meetings that we had. Now, as you can see, we talked about the GitHub Pages. It was able to handle 40,000 people without breaking a sweat. So it did a really good job.
Yeah. And the other thing I would mention as well is today, the reports you get out of Teams live events, that graph is actually one that you get out of the box. That's also another thing that was announced at Ignite, that we're actually going to get post-event statistics and analytics and attendee info a lot more as well. So a lot of these kind of numbers we're looking at wondering, I wonder what this actually means. One quick thing on the total views, if somebody comes into a meeting, leaves and comes back, that counts as 2 views. But as well, when you're staring at as a producer and you're looking at a number, you're not seeing the total views, you're actually seeing who's on, but even the who's on, the anonymous kind of collapses a bunch of people. So there's some discrepancies amongst how many views there were. In fact, you can kind of see our track numbers. If you look at any given track, you can see there's hundreds of users there. But if you're sitting in that meeting looking at the number, it might only show 50 or 80 people, even though over the course of that track, there were, over 1,000 as an example. So it's kind of interesting how those statistics come together. A little bit about the experience. Now we're going to kind of dive into some other stuff, kind of wrap this part up. If the live event has not started, it's a very ugly screen. My real call to action here is always start a live event early, because this is a horrible attendee experience. If it just says live event hasn't started, that's the same screen they would get if they joined 24 hours early or 5 minutes early or even 1 minute early. So you actually really want to start that live event, I would say at least 10 minutes early, if not more, so that you can actually have a screen up that people know they're in the right place. That's also the screen they would get if the live event ended early. So I also would recommend you continue to run it so that you can actually say, thanks for joining, or links to download the slides or whatever at the end of the event. So on either end of it, you want to have a richer experience. Just a kind of a couple of quick lessons learned. Some of these things we already mentioned, like the clicking and the staging experience is quite important. Helping your people know. I'm a big fan of tech checks, making sure the speakers know what's happening, when to join, helping for that transition. Scripting was something we wish we would have had. So that was something that with meetings, you can actually script it. So you can actually script the creation of meetings. The attendee reports are going to get better. It would be nice to have that ability to share some of these handouts and recordings. Those kinds of experiences, there is some improvements coming as well. And a little bit about the party we did. So we actually ran a party trying to pull together the community in a virtual experience. And we had music where we had a couple of different live kind of DJ type of experience. We also had a Twitch streamer who was streaming across a Teams meeting. We also did some live events or some lightning talks and some cosplay and trivia. And even our cosplay, we kind of played with a little bit at where it was virtual changing the characters as well. We built a 3D spaces, like a SharePoint spaces as our lobby. And I think that this is actually something as well. You may actually find online some MVPs talking about your ability to create a lobby out of SharePoint spaces. And this becomes even more important in an organization where you're trying to run an expo hall, or you're trying to run the idea of multiple things happening at the same time. It can be quite powerful to run, say, different things. So like say our trivia and sci-fi, but as well for an event like this, you could actually visualize what room 5 looks like. You could actually have a door that you enter into that you're clicking through that then takes you into what's happening. And you could have the agenda, you could have the assets, you could have bios for speakers. There's a lot of different things you could do with this concept of SharePoint Spaces virtual lobby. And this would be hosted in SharePoint. So this next section, I want to kind of talk about some of what's new and coming in Teams so you can visualize what's going to be possible even in the future. And one of my favorites is this together mode scenes. And we did absolutely use the together mode in our party as well. So we had the community zone. In the community zone, we had a together mode scene where we could see everybody, and as we're talking and chatting, there's a lot of statistics or analytics around research that Microsoft's done about the calming effect, where people can feel like it's more daunting, or it's I don't know, some more anxiety in the gallery mode, and they've created some more additional bigger gallery modes. But this is kind of fun, these together mode scenes. We talked about layouts. So there's new layouts that are coming as well. You can see kind of that green screen style speaker with a talking head, or being able to show the other speakers. Like, wouldn't it be great if even with this session, if we had the slides plus the 3 different speakers, and I think that, you know, we can kind of fake this a little bit with NDI and OBS today, but we're going to have some native functionality with custom layouts coming soon. And Ryan talked about that a little bit. Breakout rooms. So breakouts, you can imagine in a school, as an example, being able to have breakout rooms where you can have a smaller group of people doing things. And even in our party where we were doing the community zone, you know, things start getting loud and you have some people who are obnoxious. You may absolutely want people to kind of break off and be able to have their own little room where they're talking and chatting. I think that this is going to be big on Birds of a Feather, you know, those types of experiences that you may have been to at Ignite, that idea of being able to get together and chat with people about topics. And I can imagine even an Ask the Experts kind of thing where you have the different topics and then you can kind of choose and pick and choose which rooms. And you get that idea of people can go into these breakouts and then come back, and you can actually kind of control that experience. You can even assign people to rooms or create names of rooms and having people join in those. So that's pretty cool stuff. Some other things, the size of rooms. So today it's limited to 10,000 members of a team. They're increasing that to 25,000 for a team. There isn't a limit on the tenant. So don't get confused about, you can have a team that is the enterprise, but it's not individual membership, okay? And then we've got the webinar registration reporting, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, that ability to automate emails, which is super cool. Post-event reporting dashboard, really kind of fun, cool stuff. Just recently here in Missouri, and I say here because I'm actually still sitting in Missouri, they did a hybrid event. So I'm going to kind of talk about things from a hybrid perspective. Hybrid being, and I think this could be a thing where there's an event where you have speakers who are in rooms, and then those rooms are actually broadcasted virtually, so you can have virtual attendees. So imagine this concept of hybrid. So the first thing I want to kind of mention here is this capacity notification. Wouldn't it be cool? You've got video. Well, the room, it can tell you how many people are in the room. So this is kind of a combination of using AI with the video. And as well, these room panels. So the room panels are a very physical thing, but this ability to say, hey, this is what's happening in this room. So as you're walking around, and I know there's a lot of third parties that do this kind of thing, but there's some more Teams integration for this kind of thing as well. In fact, Microsoft is creating a fast track benefit where you can actually get 2 rooms. I'm sure there's a lot of criteria, but essentially Microsoft is really focusing on improving the conference room experience, and even is building a benefit around conference rooms and upgrading your rooms, those Teams rooms panels, but also even the Surface hubs. There's a new 85-inch Surface hub where you can have multiples of them, one that's like the video, and then the other one that's like your whiteboard. Ton of stuff we could talk about with whiteboard, but I won't dive into that right now. Any more that you guys wanted to talk to? We got a little bit of time. I'm thinking I want to just show you this spaces thing that we created. That where did it go? Yeah. Feel free to jump in too. I'm just going to show you guys this. When I was talking about the SharePoint Spaces lobby, so here we have M365 Virtual Community, and this is actually a tenant that Microsoft created. So we've actually got a tenant where Microsoft has given it to the community. And if you're curious about this, feel free to ping me afterward. But essentially, Lori Pottmeyer and the Microsoft Teams team have created this experience where you actually get a team for your community, your user group, that kind of thing. So we actually created this. There's an M365 virtual community, and you can go out to m365vc.com and sign up to be part of this community. But you can see the different things, the different rooms. So we had our trivia room as an example. We had our cosplay. There's a little bit of a sign saying, hey, it's going to be recorded. Make sure you're aware of that. We had our French speaking chat room. We had our 3D VR. So all you had to do is click in this and it would open up the link to the actual event inside of the VR. And here we've got the community zone in VR. We've got the community zone that was in a Teams meeting. And then we have the lightning talks that were hosted by Christian Buckley, where we had sessions from Jeff Tieper and Bill Bear, Lori Pottmeyer, bunch of really cool sessions primarily from Microsoft folks. We had Joey Snow, he's a Microsoft employee and he's a DJ. We had some high energy kind of dance music going on in a Teams meeting. And then we had Joris Visser, who's a super cool Twitch streamer, where he actually builds the music and just streams it in video. So it's kind of a super cool experience too. Keith Ritchie, who used to be a SharePoint PFE, he has his albums out there as well. So we had kind of some Keith Ritchie music going. And then we had the super fun Microsoft trivia with Martin Visser, who's an MVP out of the Netherlands. And it was like 4 in the morning and he's running his trivia. Fantastic experience. But so that idea is basically, if I edit this real quick, you can actually see, you can essentially edit these, make links, have different behaviors that happen as people interact with these 3D objects. Really, really cool stuff. And I don't mean to spend too much time here, but this idea of you could do a 3D video, a 360 image, 3D objects, files, images, a lot of cool stuff here. And let me just toss this back to you guys. Anything you want to add to the conversation or share? I'm actually going to stop sharing. We can just jump on video as we do some Q&A.
I would just add that a lot of what you see here between the spaces, the different websites and all of the different tech is really focused on bringing people together, bringing all the community together, similarly to what Teams Fest is doing over the last 12 hours or so. And live events is a great way to do that. You're really uniting people. And I think Microsoft with the various releases is merging even live events and meetings and the different capabilities to try to democratize as much of the cool things you can do with all the different tech to unite us all, right? And so feel free to ping us with any questions as you go through your journey and try to leverage the tech to both showcase what's happening in your enterprise and unite your communities.
Brilliant, guys. That was a really good presentation there on Teams live events and Teams meetings and the difference. I mean, from personal experience as well, I get that question a lot like you said at the beginning around, should it be a live event? Should it be a meeting? And weighing up those differences. I mean, I'm sure people that are on this session as well still before today were asking themselves that around some of the things they do in their organization or some of the things they're doing within their customer base and so on around live event, Teams meeting, what should it be? So that was a really good discussion there. As said, if anyone does have any questions for the three guys here, we post it into the meeting chat, or if you do want to come off mute and ask your question, then again, please raise your hand and I can enable it so you can come off to mute to ask your questions.
So I did see somebody asked about the breakout rooms, wondering when those were going to be launched.
Yeah, that's correct.
And there is a link there that Galen shared in the chat.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? It's supposed to be by the end of this month, isn't it, for breakout rooms? But we're all sort of clinging on, thinking, come on, when's it going to come? Because it's one of those most anticipated things, isn't it, around Teams meetings?
Yeah, that should be here hopefully end of the month. I have some clients in the education space, and as you said, we're all anxiously awaiting that one.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other questions at all that they want to ask the guys here?
Quiet group.
Okay, so I am going to, I've already posted it, but I'm going to post it again. Just the feedback form, really important that we're doing this feedback form for the people that are presenting's purpose, but also for us here at Teams Fest. So please do fill out that feedback form. The QR code there as well as on the screen, nicely put there. Thank you very much for having me on there. So we do have that QR code as well that you can use, or the links in the chat. But I just want to say thank you very much for joining today, everyone. Really good presentation, a great insight into Teams live events and doing those bigger scale events and the tools you can use around that. So thank you very much to the three of you.
Hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate everybody coming and attending. I do think that there is absolutely a future of using Teams as live events. I'm seeing it more and more, and it's scaling super well and works really well. Feel free to reach out. Thanks, everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone.